Hi everybody, today I'm joined by Kate McKee of Warwickshire Property Partners, and Kate is also an EPC Energy Performance Assessor. But as well as that, Kate invests in property and is an active property investor and entrepreneur, aren't you, Kate?
Yes, some of my sins.
So what we're doing today is we're taking a look at how Kate has cured what appeared to be rising damp from her property, but it wasn't rising damp, was it?
Well, it was penetrating damp mostly, but there's some aspects of rising damp, but we've stopped all issues from any having in the future at all.
So what's the difference between rising damp and penetrating damp for those out there who are not familiar with these technical terms?
So rising damp is coming up from the ground, and it's usually found in older property where they've built straight on dirt instead of having a proper foundation. And penetrating damp is generally coming in from the side. So in my case, it was because the property on the next door to me had a higher ground level because we're on a hill. So that's the higher ground level, that damp is coming through the wall sideways into my property.
And because the property is a Victorian property, it effectively wasn't built on deep piled foundations. It didn't have a damp-proof course in there.
No.
And you're on a hill, so the neighbouring property is slightly higher. So the soil of their building is above
sideways.
your ground level.
Exactly.
And that's what's causing your penetrating damp.
Yeah.
So, is it easy to fix this? Is this a complex job?
It's not a complex job, and I'll say that because I did the majority of it myself. I did have a lot of help from a friend of mine, Kevin, who is a damp and timber expert. Can highly recommend him, and he taught me how to do it and showed me how to stop damp problems from coming back in the future.
Well, that's a fantastic skill to have and a fantastic bit of knowledge to have. So, do you want to talk us through the process of what's actually going on here? I mean, first thing you've got to do, I imagine, is chip off the plaster.
It is, yeah. So I actually left this bit to Kevin. I mean, the tool itself isn't that difficult to use, but they're just so much quicker. So I let him to crack on. So I think you will see now some pictures and videos of Kevin actually doing that. It is very loud and dust does get everywhere. So if you're living in the property like I have been, make sure everything's covered. You'll be wiping dust away for weeks. And he chipped off to about 1 metre. So he picked out the level of where the ground was on the other side, and he went 2 quarters of bricks above that to start.
So effectively, like you'd have a damp-proof course outside, 2 bricks above ground level,
Yeah.
and that would be where you'd insert a damp-proof membrane. Now, being a Victorian property, you can't go back and sort of lift the house up, insert a damp-proof membrane and lower it back down. So,
Unfortunately not.
did you put a chemical damp-proof?
Yeah, so we
coursing?
had injections externally and internally. We took all of the skirting boards off in the rooms that were particularly damaged by damp, and in my property it was all down the right hand wall from the front door to the back door, and that's where the property level was higher. And it was also the 2 middle rooms because they are suspended timber floors and not cement like the rest of the property is. So the previous owner had actually allowed those air bricks to be blocked up, meaning there was no air circulating and it was indeed very damp. And I did have to replace all the joists and all the floorboards in both those rooms as well.
Sounds to me like it was a bit of a built-in swimming pool there.
Yeah, the smell when we lifted the floorboards of the damp dirt underneath was not great.
The beauties of old houses, you find all of these maintenance tasks, and old commercial buildings as well, for those of you who buy commercial. So once you've injected a chemical damp-proof course, what did you and Kevin do next?
So, I mean, you will see now Kevin's actually talking us through how to create tanking slurry, what to do, and the parts to mix it in. So you're just grabbing handfuls it's very dry powdered form. So if you have got any cuts on your hands, and Kevin does mention this as well, make sure you wear gloves to wash your hands well, because it really does hurt when it gets in there. And then you're going to mix it up with water to a consistency, something like paint, or as I likened it to pancake batter. It's quite similar. And then you're going to get a nylon brush. It must be nylon because otherwise it will just seal up. So we used an old dustpan and brush, which is ideal. And you're just going to start slapping it on. Start from the top, obviously, and if there's any areas with really loose brick dust, brush those off first so that the tanking slurry actually slides on and actually sticks in all those crevices.
So I've got this image of you accidentally mixing up your pancake mix ready for pancake day or making a crepe, and it coming out grey like tanking slurry by accident.
Yeah, it wouldn't be great. Definitely wouldn't want to be eating that. But the problem is you can't actually make it any thicker. So you've got to be careful when you're adding water. It's easy. Well, sorry, you can't make it thinner. It's difficult to get the ratios right, and you don't want to end up making far too much slurry, and then you've got to actually scrape it all out because it dries like cement. So if you're using an old bucket, that bucket's going to get really heavy after a couple of times of you making too much of the slurry.
Yeah, great little tip for getting the hardened stuff off the bucket. Let it dry, flick the bucket upside down and bang the edges or the base in, and you'll find it just drops off.
Yeah, I did end up doing that actually. It's not a bit of a messy job again. Make sure you do it in the garden, and don't wear any clothes you care about if you're going to be using tanking slurry, because that stuff stays.
Well, I was going to say, we've got some great pictures of you applying it there, Kate, especially in your orange... what do we call it? V-Festival shades.
So, I mean, I think by the end, but I did 3 coats of slurry. So you want to always do at least 2. I know that I'm going to be having this property for a really long time. I'm not intending to sell it. It will be an investment. And I don't want to be having calls from tenants saying that they've got damp issues in the future. I want to do the job properly and do it once. So I went for a 3rd layer of the tanking slurry to really create that membrane barrier between any damp coming through. Yeah. And by the 3rd layer, I was losing my mind a little bit. So I think you'll see pictures of me with a bottle of wine.
With a bottle of wine, yeah?
Yeah, with a bottle of wine at about 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night, doing just those last awkward bits of tanking, getting them done, ready for the plasterer.
Fantastic. So the next thing, obviously, once the tanking is dry, is to plaster. Now, is it the usual sort of method of plastering, where we would put a base coat, bond coat of plaster on, and then we'd put a top coat finish? That's
right. So the good thing about this is, obviously, if plaster is coming on, he's got to be plastering onto a rough surface. So the great thing about tanking slurry is it really does create a great layer for a plasterer to then come and plaster over. Made life a lot easier, and he smoothed it out, although I have not put the skirting boards back on yet, I will say that. So we do have a nice big gap underneath. And the other thing I would say, which can be a bit difficult, if you're tanking an area where you've got a radiator on the wall or something that is hanging on the wall, you have to use a special type of bracket once you've done that tanking that hooks into the plasterwork and goes up, so it doesn't penetrate that layer. Because once you've penetrated that layer of tanking you've created, it becomes like a plasticky membrane almost. If you make a hole in that, you may as well have not bothered to tank it, because damp will come in through that hole.
Yeah, bit of wise advice there, I like that.
Yeah.
So obviously with the tanking, it's a non-porous material, so you wouldn't have needed to have PVA'd the back of it, but you might need to PVA up any joint line with your prior plaster.
Yeah.
In order to stop the plaster drying too fast. So you've got a good scratch coat, you've put your bond on, you've then put your finishing plaster, and you've obviously enjoyed the wine whilst all of this process
More
has
for
gone.
my sanity than anything else.
And you've got a fantastic finished product here. I mean, the plasterer's done a really good job of feathering in and blending the old plaster to the new.
Yeah.
Are there any tips you'd give people out there?
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna buy as well, if you're gonna tank or you're gonna do any damp proofing yourself, don't buy dust sheets. It's a waste of money. What you should do instead is get really thick, heavy-duty plastic bin liners. And what you want to do is, as you take them off, just unroll them part of the way, and you create essentially a big, thick plastic strip that you can just drag along the wall with you as you go. Tanking is messy. I'm planning on ripping up the carpet in the hallway anyway, so it wasn't as much of a concern for me. But if you're doing this sort of retrospectively, after you've had some work done in the property, get those bin bags. It's definitely worth it, and you won't end up clearing up bits of plastic that's come through dust sheet.
So, anything that you would advise somebody on who's about to do this?
I mean, if you are doing a property on a budget, this is my first investment, and I'm also living in the house at the same time, so I am able to do stuff in the evenings and the weekends. If you're in that position and you want to do some of this stuff yourself, tanking and damp proofing is something you can do yourself quite easily. And I saved myself about £350 by doing that myself, which obviously is money towards the new kitchen.
Well, that's a good little tip there, but it does take a lot of time, doesn't it, Kate?
It does, yeah. I mean, I spent probably 5 or 6 hours doing all 3 layers, because you have to leave 24 hours between each layer so it's completely dry. And you'll see on the pictures, you can tell where it's dry and where it isn't. And you will see also where the weep holes are from the injection. That's just stayed wet, and that's fine. But you need the rest to really be dry before you go and put another layer on.
Yeah, no, really wise advice. Well, thanks for sharing all of that with us today, Kate. It's been a pleasure again to share with the audience some of your expert knowledge on what you're doing with your development projects, and you're making effectively a HMO from a house here.
Yeah, it's going to be a mini mo.
From the ground up, as you can quite literally see in this property.
I think it's important to do at least one set of property yourself, so that you know how jobs are done. So in the future, if I get contractors out, I know the process that they're undertaking, and I also am making sure I'm not getting mugged out of money I don't need to be.
Very
always
wise.
Helpful.
Well, if you want to stay tuned to see what's happening with Kate's property, smash that subscribe button, hit that bell icon, and you will be the first to know when Kate's video comes up next of the next stage of her project. Until then, drop Kate some comments, whether you think she's a nutter or whether you think she's smart. But whatever those comments are, drop them below and give her a big thumbs up just to say you loved her great share today. Thank you.
Thanks.